Well, hello and welcome to the Mindset Mentor. I'm Tania Kolar, helping you live your best life. Now, of course, it's kind of difficult to live your best life when you're not experiencing optimal health. So, today's show, we're going to focus on how you can increase your overall health, what you can do, some of the lifestyle changes that are accessible to you. We're going to talk about metabolic diseases, and certainly many people are experiencing disease. Somewhere in the body. So we're going to talk about, can it actually be reversed? Such an interesting topic. I know you want to know the answer to this. Well, I have my expert guest today joining me from Ottawa, actually. So Dr. Kwando Kyermanteng is here. He is a critical care and palliative care doctor at the Ottawa Hospital, sharing his knowledge with us today. Very excited for this conversation. He also is the founder of the Resource Optimization Network. So we're going to delve into some of the research that's out there as well. Is there enough research? Do we need more? We're going to talk about Dr. Kwando Kyermanteng's his vision of shaping the future of medicine. So how about we just dive in, jump into the conversation, say hello and welcome to Dr. Kwando Kyermanteng. It's so great to have you joining me here today.
Wow, Tanya, this is quite the intro. I'm feeling like I would blush if I could, you know what I'm saying? But like this is quite the love there. So like I'm really excited to be here and I really appreciate the kind words.
Oh, it's my pleasure. In fact, I think that, we need to show a lot more love to our medical team that has been taking care of us all, especially going through a pandemic that, oh my goodness, the uncertainty, the chaos, the fear that was everywhere. And, for the medical professionals to be active, stepping up, doing their best in the midst of all that, I have so much love and respect for that. So I really want to just give you kudos, put that out there to everyone. And I think that Dr. K, that the world has seen a lot of fear and stress come from the pandemic, in the midst of the pandemic and post-pandemic as well. So I want to talk about some of the fear that you have seen, and if you have seen that sort of filter into other areas, let's say of the metabolic diseases that are out there, or any disease really, the kind of fear that has set in. How has that taken hold of our lives, and what can we do to kind of step out of the fear?
Wow, yeah, it's a great question and a great observation. And one thing that's clear to me is that we are doused in fear right now. The last 2.5 years, we have been inundated with a fearful message. And, I'm here probably today, if I'm being honest, Tanya, because of trying to counteract that fear narrative. Like I was, to give you context, so I was in the hospital I'm at today, the very first COVID patient that came through our ICU doors, I was there for. And as you alluded to, we were nervous, we were scared. Are we going to be Italy, New York? Are we going to be overwhelmed? And we obviously overcame. We focused. We'll talk about that too. Like focused on the things that we can control, trust the process, and we got through. We got through it. And what was clear to me though was that the messaging that came to the public and to everybody else was very fear based and less facts based.
Mm.
And we there's portions of the population that really needed to be fearful of COVID, but there was also like clearly people that need to be way less fearful, like kids, young adults, healthy adults that didn't have metabolic disease, people that didn't have compromised immune systems. And all this to say, like, we were very much on the offensive to say, hey, you know what, let's have a more balanced approach, because that fear has consequences. We don't make objective decisions. We make decisions in a place of fear where there could be secondary consequences. Kids, well, I'll use kids as an example. You
Mm-hmm.
close down schools, you affect their mental health, their physical health, obesity, eating disorders are impacted. Their rates of child abuse, because there's nowhere for the kids to go. um, like all these factors. Oh, even the workforce. So for us to be frontline, someone has to watch our kids if they're not at school. So all these factors were impacted by a decision that was, from my opinion, later on, not initially, but later on, was really fear based. And so honestly, and then even now when you see people, they're shells of themselves. They're not the same person. They're hesitant to show their true colors. They're hesitant to be social again. And these impact, like that level of stress,
Mm-hmm.
for sure impacts your ability to be healthy, to to be, to lose that weight, to sleep better, all the things that are so important to for you to have that optimal mindset and optimal way of living. So man, it's been a huge part of our lives. And if you out there are feeling anxious and feeling, overwhelmed and all that stuff, it's because we weren't helping. We really weren't providing an out for many folks. So this is very much so. I agree with you, Tanya. Like this has been what we've been going through and currently go through now.
Yeah, I love that you said all that. It really gives us a moment to pause and to take a look at where we are right now in our, feelings and our emotion in terms of, the stress in our lives. And obviously the goal is to minimize stress as much as possible. Stress leads to dis-ease in the body. Dis-ease leads to further illness, that can be certainly, terminal, life-threatening. So we need to take steps, as we can. Sometimes we don't know all of the answers, but it's so great to have these conversations and to get some advice from an expert who has been there in the midst of that fear and seeing what that looks like, and seeing some of the severity of the situation, but also knowing that it doesn't have to be as horrible as we think sometimes. It's the mindset around it. It's our perception. Of course, our perception is based on the knowledge that we have at any given time. So I always feel it's so important to be empowered and to be knowledgeable, to do our own research. A lot of the pandemic, there was such uncertainty, and we just took the advice that we were given or what we heard, and then that was it. We locked into that fear, let's say, right? And then sometimes it can be difficult to sort of disassociate yourself to that initial belief. I always feel that we need to question our beliefs sometimes because, I know for myself in my life and my upbringing, I had so many limiting beliefs that really were detrimental to my daily living and to how I'm going to live my best life. And it took me a while to unravel and to really actually first to recognize those limiting beliefs and how it was impacting my life. So it's so important to move forward in a way that is empowering. So in this sector of medicine where you have all of this fear, and somebody listening right now, Dr. K, how can we or what can we do as initial steps to start to debunk some of the myths that came about, and how can we minimize the stress and the fear that may still have its hold on us?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think there's so much information out there. It's hard to navigate who to trust. You'll have doctors all the time coming out, like when we look at the pandemic or any other issue, and they'll have differing opinions and they all seem certain.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the ways of approaching critical thinking is just, what perspective does that person have? Like I'll give an example with the pandemic. Well, some of our loudest voices were people that had never either walked into a hospital or never talked to or treated a COVID patient. Like
Ooh.
when you're an epidemiologist, so somebody that's an expert in terms of doing statistical analysis and trying to determine projections and all these things, for them to come out and say, this is what we need to do during the pandemic, they have a single area of expertise where, what when it came to, many of us, for example, we were seeing COVID patients. We have science backgrounds. We we had that perspective, because I think this is one of those things that Omicron uh, gave was, not all of a sudden someone that had COVID,
Mm-hmm.
and people always shun when I say this, but I literally, in the 2.5 years, almost approaching 3 years of the pandemic, I have still have yet to take care of a completely healthy person in the intensive care unit. So
Mm-hmm.
like, these are the kind of things that where the message is lost. So you try and sort out like where that source is coming from, what their perspective is. Does it even make sense to you? Like, intuitively, does it make sense to you?
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of us have intuition that we often ignore, because we try and justify our way through it. And you gotta obviously be able to rationalize through these things, but your instincts are there for a reason. It's either pattern recognition
Mm-hmm.
or what have you, but it's there for a reason. So like, does this intuitively make sense to you? Does it feel right when you're hearing this logic or this explanation? And then finding reliable sources that have traditionally have come through for you. Like, if you look at their track record and they were saying, this is an approach to sleep that I think that works well. This is an approach to diet, improving your nutrition that appears to work well, and the proof is in the pudding. They end up getting results, and then once again, it makes sense, intuitive sense to you. Like, these are you could lean on reputable sources to try and get that reliable information. But I'll tell you, it's one of the things that I'm trying to teach my three kids is how to like really siphon through all that kind of the noise, all the information that's being thrown at you. But
Mm-hmm.
critical thinking, I hope we could regain this in some way, because I think we're in some ways have lost it.
Yeah, I love that. You're so right, and I think it's just coming back to source, who we are. To be able to tap into that intuition. We all have that intuitive nature. It's just a thing, but often, as you say, it's that external noise that drowns out that intuition. So you talked about nutrition and sleep, which of course has an impact on the quality of our lives. I think that sleep is certainly underrated. It's so important to have really good quality sleep. I mean, think about it. When you've had that wonderful, peaceful sleep, you wake up and you just feel good. And it's like, the snowball effect that happens, right? When you're exhausted, you wake up, you don't wake up in the best mood. And then everything seems to be a much bigger problem, or a problem just in general, that wouldn't normally be a problem. We're less tolerant, we're more irritable. So it's so essential to get some first quality of sleep, and then to augment that with nutrition and choices and decisions that we make, and to strengthening our mindset. So, Dr. K, do you have any advice for getting a good night's sleep as a start?
Yes, I love that question, because if it's you alluded to it, Tanya. Like, it's if you got good sleep, a lot of things fall into place. If you have bad sleep, a lot of stuff fall off the wagon, or whatever the term is. I get my metaphors mixed up
Yeah.
all the time. But like, in terms of like advice for sleep, as especially, I'll say this, so I don't want to be hypocritical.
Mhm.
There's a lot of stuff that I know is better that I don't do, and
Yeah.
especially as a dad of three, and they're
Yeah.
young, and as a physician,
Hmm.
we do have to do better. But some of the basics, I think, when it comes to having better sleep onset, I think the turning off the screens early is essential. If you're tied to a screen, we like to use blue blocking glasses to enhance that, to just
Hmm.
allow that melatonin to be amplified when you get closer to bedtime. Another thing I like to do is avoid eating close to bedtime. Like, like, you got to eat when you got to eat, but if you're gonna, if you could, if you could be a little bit further away from when you're gonna put your head down, I think that's optimal. I like doing stretches, things to wind down. Like think of it as like you're being primed for sleep. So, in the last 30 minutes, the screen is off, you do some stretches, you have that lovely tea that helps calm you down, you listen
Mm-hmm.
to some soothing music, um, and phone out of the room. Like honestly, I know this is easier said than done, but having that phone out of the room, there's nothing worse than having that blue light staring at you while you're scrolling right before bed. Um, and doing some kind of calming activity during the night, like or before bed, like whether that's journaling, whether that's reading that book. But think about the bedroom, like sleep is for sleep. I don't no screens. We don't have a TV in our bedroom for a reason. I think that is like some of the more basic kind of tips I would say for sleep, and a couple other ones that maybe are intuitive to some, but having that routine bedtime, like trying to keep it as consistent as possible, and your wake up time as consistent as possible, normally will only just give you that better quality sleep. But yeah, sleep is a big one. Like, there's like the onset of sleep. Is how do you improve the quality of sleep? Like another one for quality of sleep actually is uh, I love the uh, eye covers and the earplugs. I know it's not
Mm.
sexy, but making sure that or alternatively, just making sure you have like there's no sunlight that gets into the room, but having the eye covers and the earplugs, in my opinion,
Mm.
what much more better quality of sleep. So if you're the type that you might get the hours in, but you feel like you're not getting that deep sleep as much, this could be a game changer for you. But there's a lot of things, but sometimes you just choose one little change, and it can make all the difference in the world.
Yeah, I love that you said that, and because everything that you have outlined in the tips that you just outlined is doable. It's
Mm,
achievable. There are small things that you can do that will have a huge impact if you start to incorporate them. I know we can all have our moments, and we're guilty. I'm certainly very guilty of the screen time. Boy, that's a tough one for me. I know the benefits of having a great night's sleep. I know I feel better when I don't spend time on that computer just before bed because it just gets my brain wired and going. And sometimes I'll wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and then I reach for the computer again and I continue. I love to learn. I cannot get enough information, so I'm
mm-hmm,
always absorbing. And I know that that's not the best thing, certainly long term. And so sometimes we have to analyze and take a look at our lives. What is serving me in this moment and what is not serving my best life? And let's try to make the changes that we can. It can be little tweaks here and there. You don't have to switch everything up and cause more stress in life, right?
mm-hmm,
I think we sometimes get overwhelmed and we start to not make any choices that are better because we get, bogged down by too much information or the thought of too much information that we have to change in our lives. Well, we are going to continue the conversation here with Dr. Kwando Kyermanteng, joining me from Ottawa. He is a critical care physician and a palliative care physician, and certainly working with, some of the sickest of sickest out there. And so we're going to learn a lot today and how we can foster better health in our day-to-day lives. Stay tuned. We'll be back here on Sauga 960. And welcome back to the Mindset Mentor. I'm Tania Kolar. Here on Sauga 960, we are helping you to live your best life. My special guest today is Dr. Kwando Kyermanteng, joining me from Ottawa. He is a palliative care physician and a critical care physician. Of course, he's seen some of the sickest, in his career, and we're really learning about how we can live our best lives. So we can hopefully not find ourselves in a position where we really need that level of care. I think it's the little choices in life that have the biggest impact. And it's so key to the quality of our lives. So, Dr. K, it's such a pleasure having you join me here today on the Mindset Mentor, sharing your wisdom, your expertise, and also giving us some insight into what you have seen in your career. Certainly around the pandemic, there was so much fear, going on. And just before we took a break, we were talking about, what can we do to minimize stress? We talked about how important sleep is in our daily lives, and you gave us some really great tips in that regard. And I also would love to touch on nutrition. Some of the choices that we make nutritionally, or I would say actually all the choices that we make nutritionally, have a huge impact. And I think in moments of stress, we can reach to, not always, but we can reach to foods that do not serve us, that are not healthy. And also, I think that just because the world seems to have become very busy, fast food is often what we sort of reach towards, or, the ordering in, having it delivered because we just don't have the time. So, what can you suggest nutritionally that can, help empower us in our health?
Yeah, that's a great question, Tanya. Like, I always try and be realistic when it comes to people's like food. Like, like I think a lot of times people think you got to make these drastic changes in life, and as I alluded to before, sometimes it's just a tweak. It's something small that
Mm-hmm.
you could do to just try and that could just really help you either lose the weight or feel better, or even what we might talk about later is reverse metabolic disease, reverse your type 2 diabetes.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is what I often think about. I also often think about this is not a cookie cutter solution. Like there's not, somebody might respond really well to keto. Somebody might
Mm-hmm.
really respond well to veganism. Someone might be to low carb. So it's a matter of finding what works for you. But in terms of like big principles that I think more people can do to improve their eating is like if you can reduce your processed food intake. If there was a one thing I would say, like if you're going to only choose one thing to do,
Mm-hmm.
if you could avoid or reduce your amount of processed food and really stick with whole foods, the middle of the the grocery aisles where all what I mean, like like this is where you can get the most bang for your buck. Honestly, like when you look at the foods that are packaged, that are high in carbs, high in more pro-inflammatory, I
Mm-hmm.
think there are going to be negative consequences there. So focusing on whole food, real food, like vegetables, like real meat, like all these things that you could improve your overall outlook. The second thing I think is an easier hack for people is to really focus on protein. Like this was a very enlightened moment for us. We had Dr. Ted Naiman on our show Solving Healthcare, and it was one of those the real, it was intuitive when he said it, but then you thought like, oh wow, that really makes sense. Like if you think about increasing your proportion of protein on your plate, like, and you're less likely to fill up with carbs, you're less likely to fill up with more junk, and
Mm-hmm.
high quality protein, like whether that's fish, whether that's egg, whether that's you know Greek yogurt, whether that's you know uh, beef. If you really think about increasing your protein intake, a lot of wins could happen. You increase your lean body mass, which improves your metabolic rate. You feel better. You eat less inflammatory foods. You're just winning. And then the
Mm-hmm.
third thing that works for some, but not everybody, that I find is a uh, nice hack for folks is thinking about when you eat. Like thinking about that concept of intermittent fasting or time restricted eating when you have a window where you eat. Like for me, I'm approaching about 5 years now of just eating between noon and 8 o'clock,
Mm-hmm.
um, and this allows me to not ingest as much calories maybe as I might, and I still think about what I'm eating, like the quality of the food I'm eating. I still think about protein intake, but having a smaller eating window, typically it's harder to fill up as much as you would when your eating window might be 12 hours or 16 hours, all waking hours of the day. So those are the three kind of mini hacks I would say that you know can give you the biggest bang for your buck. Actually, there's one more if I have a second. It's just
Yes.
elimination. Like eliminate some stuff that you know is junk, or reduce. Like some people, their kryptonite is chips or chocolate bars
Hmm.
or pop. And if you could either reduce it or eliminate it altogether, man, you can make strides, like huge strides for your health.
These are excellent tips, and what I love is that you use the word reduce, because right away, what happens when we say we can never have that ever again in our lives, the mindset starts going a little bit crazy. It's going to start to challenge you, and the more you're going to start to crave that food that you're trying to eliminate. So if we can approach it from a reduction standpoint, it's going to be much easier to move forward. And maybe you want to start as small as one meal, right? Instead of saying, okay, I'm going to do this forever. Okay, how about 30 days? Okay, maybe 30 days is too much, start with a week. And if a week is too much, start with a day. And if that's too much, you start with one meal, right? So it's always that choice in that moment. We can always choose something that is empowering. Sometimes we don't make those best choices, but then you don't want to beat yourself up over it, because then you get caught in that cycle of, well, I cheated anyway, or I should have, and then you start to feel like, you failed at something. It's not a fail,
Mhm.
right? So it's a matter of, really conditioning your mindset to set you up for success. And I think that our environment is also vital in how we can set ourselves up for success. Now, you talked about kryptonite, and what's that kryptonite to all the listeners out there? What is it for you? I mean, I don't know. I love pizza. I just love a good, yeah, right, thin crust
Yes,
pizza, baby.
I could go. Oh, amen.
Yeah, right. And so, and I'm going to also say, chocolate for me. So, you want to try to eliminate those triggers, in your environment. So you're not going to want to have a bowl of chocolate, chocolate bars on your countertop. Maybe you're going to have the fruit there so that you can associate that. The mind sees that, the eye sees that, and you're going to start to associate that. Oh, maybe I'm going to have a piece of fruit because it's right there.
Yeah.
You don't want to have those, photos of and images of pizza everywhere if that's your kryptonite, right?
But you know what? One good point though too is,
Yeah.
you should like be kind to yourself too.
Yeah.
Like I think we are really hard on ourselves when, you know, you lapse or you don't go as planned. And I think
Hmm.
one, if you have a little bit of self compassion, and two, just whatever you choose to do, make it attainable and like enjoy the process, because
Yeah.
a lot of these outcomes that you're looking for are going to take
Hmm.
a while. So
Hmm.
whatever you're doing, like I don't know if we'll talk about exercise too, but like if whatever you choose to do, if it is, low carb, if it is keto, whatever approach you might choose, make it enjoyable. Make it when you're cooking, it's a fun event. It's foods that you really are passionate about. Like have that association, and then that habit is further embedded. So yeah, it's just a couple things that might help push you over the top.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. And another thing that I've noticed personally for myself, when I say, okay, I'm not going to have this, I'm just going to totally eliminate it. And then when I really want it and I love that food, I crave it, and then I can stave it off for a little while, but then it's going to catch up to me. It's like now it's in my system. Like I want to have that. And so then when I have it, I have too much, because now it's like the pendulum swing, right? It's going
Mm.
from one extreme to the other. So I think it's important. It depends on, obviously your personality type too, I would say. But, having balance in life is important. And yes, we ultimately want to enjoy life. And if that's your favorite food, sometimes, yeah, go for it, right? Don't beat yourself up. But
Mhm.
also just be mindful of, hey, like I want to live my best life. And, you want to say, well, what can I do nutritionally to support that as best as I can? What can I do, in terms of getting the proper sleep, enhancing our mood? What can I do in terms of exercise? You mentioned, Dr. K, exercise. I'd love to talk a little bit about that and what your recommendation is there. And then we'll get into, the reversal of metabolic disease, because I think a lot of people, it seems to be prevalent, much more prevalent than it did years ago or decades ago. And so I know there's some great tips that you can help us with, but let's start with, your your thoughts on exercise.
Yes, this is, if I'm being honest, my favorite topic because I'm just played sports my whole life. Being active is really important
Mm-hmm.
in our family. I got three young sons that are everywhere and always moving, playing a bunch of sports. And I think when it comes to movement, like and exercise, it's finding what you enjoy. Like it's kind of like
Mm-hmm.
we alluded to before, like really focusing on something that brings you joy. Like it could be hiking, it could be going out for walks with your dog, or with your neighbor, where you get to have that sense of community and connection. For me personally, hockey has been a gift. That is, especially the nature of my job is extremely stressful, so it's kind of nice outlet to have. It's camaraderie, it's teamwork, it's a little bit of aggression comes out there too. And I'm a big fan of resistance training, or like weight training. So this is one of the things that, in my opinion, if most people want to get the biggest bang for your buck, res- weight training is giving you a lot of bang for your buck. And the reasons I say that is, when you look at what longevity, and what gets people is frailty, and having that base of being able to, hey, if I fall, I don't break my hip.
Mm-hmm.
I'm remain strong to be able to keep moving. Like it really, a lot of that is your ability to get strong and stay mobile. The other benefits too is, you your metabolic rate will increase, because as you gain more lean body mass, your basal metabolic rate, so that metabolic metabolism, as you do nothing, it's more efficient. So like this is one of the benefits. And also, like resistant training, when you do your weights, you're still burning calories as the day progresses. Like it really is a great way to stay healthy. You could always add a cardio component to it. Like one of my favorite things to do is high intensity interval training. So you'll do, like for an example, is kettlebell swings for 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off,
Mm-hmm.
for 8 rounds, and you'll feel it. And it there is that cardio component as well. So it really can be whatever you want it to be. So that's why I'm a big fan of weight training. And but the take home though, Tanya, is like, whatever you choose to do, just
Mm-hmm.
make it enjoyable, something that you'll be excited to do. And the last thing maybe I'll say is, oh, and make it easy. Kind of like that concept you said about, don't leave pictures of pizza in the
Mm-hmm.
house, or leave a bowl of chocolate. One of the things that I like to do is, when I get up in the morning, either my workout gear is right beside my bed, so it makes it easy, or if I'm going to be doing some kettlebell swings, the kettlebell's right beside my bed, so I can get up, warm up, and just start swinging away. Like, just make it easy. Like, I mean, take away barriers.
Yeah, that's so good. It's really that commitment, right? It's like, look, put your running shoes on, right? Put those sneakers on, and then it's like, hey, okay, I'm ready to go. Even though just go and have a coffee first if you need to do that, right? But at least it's like,
Yeah.
okay, hey, I'm ready to go, right? It's those little things, right, that can bring us to that next level, which is so key. Now, obviously, there's some really great benefits to all of the exercises and the programs that you were talking about. But for those that are now already in a point of experiencing some decline in their health, what can they do to foster or to incorporate a little bit of exercise? Because I think that I'll just speak from my own personal experience. Recently I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and I went through chemotherapy and a couple of surgeries, and I just for me it was really tough physically to not be able to work out to the point that I would have liked to, right, as I would have in the past. And so, what kind of advice or what can you suggest to keep us, doing some sort of physical activity?
I mean, what you said, Tanya. But first of all, I'm glad you're feeling good with your health, and I hope everything's going well there.
Thank you.
Uh,
Yes.
And but you alluded to it. It's anything is better than nothing. Like
Mm-hmm.
honestly, like getting I often will celebrate the idea that, like, some people that make it to the gym, yeah, maybe they plan to work out for 40 minutes, but it end up being 10 minutes. You
Mm-hmm.
got there. Like, celebrate that you got there. And when it comes to people that aren't as, they're not that strong right now, or they're not where they want to be, start small. Like, really, it is about
Mm-hmm.
starting small. You like, even, you know, you think about a hockey player, an athlete that got injured, they're not going back to deadlifting 400 pounds. They're deadlifting the bar.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing air squats. They're doing push-ups on their knees. And it's just about the process. It's about, hey, I showed up and I am putting in my best effort that I
Mm-hmm.
can, and I am building towards something, knowing that this process will lead me to being a better place, and not only physically a better place, but mentally. Uh, like, you'll be more thinking clearer. Your mood is better, and the thing I love about exercise too, maybe it's overrated, doesn't get talked about enough, is like you you're achieving something. Like, you're
Mm-hmm.
achieving something. Like, you had a goal, and you're showing up. You're achieving it. And what does that teach you? What does that teach? Like, one of the things I love around exercise, about what teaching my kids, is that this is resilience, guys. Like, I don't want to, it's 6:30 in the morning. I don't want to be doing these pull-ups, whatever. But, like, mom and dad are showing up. We're showing dedication. We're doing this, and because of this, when it comes to a paper that I didn't feel like writing, whether that's doing a call shift that I really don't feel like doing, because I build up that resilient muscle, we could do it. We could show up. We could overcome whatever the barriers or whatever the obstacles that's in front of us. That's part of the benefit of exercise that people don't necessarily think about. When you show up, even if, like I said, even if you didn't do everything you'd like to do, you are building resilience. You're building that muscle, and that translates into so many aspects of life.
Oh, I love that so much. Absolutely. Showing up for yourself. You definitely want to, pat yourself on the back for those times when you show up. Because here's the thing is that, when we set those small goals and when we reach those little goals and we start to reward ourselves, that's activating dopamine, right? Dopamine is the reward center of the brain. And when you start to create that dopamine, the more dopamine you have, the easier it is to get to that next level of reward. And you're going to start to crave that. So, absolutely, pat yourself on the back and show up. Well, we're going to take a break and we're going to show up after this. So, stay tuned here on Sauga 960. Hello and welcome back to the Mindset Mentor. I hope you're having a phenomenal day. I hope you are living your best life. And, if you're not quite there, well, make sure you stay tuned and keep listening because we are going to help you to, at least start to think about some of the choices that you can make in your life to start bringing in that optimal health, that optimal well being. We all can do it. You got this. All right. So, my special guest today is Dr. Kwando Kyermanteng. He's joining me from Ottawa. He is a critical care and palliative care doctor. Certainly, Dr. Kwando, you've seen a lot of, different types of personalities and people and illnesses, coming in and out of the hospital, and you're helping people to live their best life. Certainly, I think one of the things that is very common, too common these days, is metabolic illness. So I'd love to get your thoughts on, some of the things that you've seen, how you've helped people. And the big topic is, can metabolic disease be reversed? I mean, that's a question we all want to know the answer to.
Yeah, I'm going to start with that, Tanya, if that's okay. And the answer
Yes.
is yes, absolutely. And this is something that was completely new to me. Like, I'll just to give some context. Like, I got my MD in 2005 and practicing since 2010, and I had no idea that the ability to reverse type 2 diabetes and metabolic disease is possible. You know, and just to define metabolic disease or syndrome, it's basically the syndrome mostly affiliated with being overweight, but having type 2 diabetes, high
Mm-hmm.
blood pressure, like a lot of they call it truncal obesity, or a lot of belly fat, and having your high levels of cholesterol, having any of a significant amount of any of those factors we call metabolic syndrome. And the reason it came to my attention was when before we had vaccines, when I saw these patients coming through the with COVID in the ICU, the most prominent thing they had was metabolic disease. It was crazy. Like I was everyone had diabetes or had obesity, and this data was out very early on, and it's such a prevalent, like we see so much of it in the public. Like even when you look at the data in the States, for example, 88% of the population has metabolic disease. Like it's significant. And so I go through the first wave in the pandemic, and I see these people, these patients come through with metabolic disease, and I tell myself, I'm like, we got to be doing something here. Like, what can we do to inform the public, get healthy, avoid getting metabolic disease? And then on a show, we started covering, that you actually can reverse this stuff. Like whether that's through intermittent fasting, whether that's through low carb, whether that's through ketogenic diets, or just overall improving your diet. And so when I heard this stuff, I started to like, that's my new passion. It's like
Mm-hmm.
telling people on how to avoid seeing me in an intensive care unit, because when you land in an intensive care unit, it's horrible. Like you're not the same person you were before you came in. You unfortunately have to go through a lot of pain and potential suffering. There's PTSD after you leave us, like all these things that we could try and avoid. So if we could do our best to inform the public on how to avoid seeing us in an intensive care unit, let's do this. Let's talk about collectively how we eat, how we get we stay active, how we reduce our stress, how do we you know foster a sense of community, especially during a time when we were all staying at home and not being
Mm-hmm.
allowed to be around each other. So this is where I was putting a lot of our energy in. But all this to say, absolutely, did I metabolic disease could be reversed. And I get stories almost daily, like our content on Solving Healthcare, or on our social media, on on these amazing stories where, hey, we heard, a guest on your show, you heard talk about reversing your type 2 diabetes. I started to lift weights, I started to reduce my carbs, and I got off my diabetic medications. And when I hear that, I can't tell you how rewarding it is. It's just because what the future is that much more bright.
Yeah, oh, that's amazing. And I think that you've provided, through your words of wisdom, the hope that is needed for many who have given up on their health, feeling stuck, feeling like there is no end to the cycle. And so again, it's about making empowering choices. They don't have to be, big ones. Again, please start small, because starting somewhere is better than doing nothing, and feeling hopeless. Hopelessness is a bad place to sit and to feel, in that, because it's heavy. It weighs you down in life, and we want to have that freeness, movability, move forward in a way that can help us live our best life. That is our goal, and that is my mission, to help everybody on this planet live their best life. And I am, so honored to have incredible guests who offer their wisdom, their expertise, like Dr. Kwando Kyermanteng, who's joining me from Ottawa. It's so great that you are helping people and shining that light in a place of darkness, especially through the pandemic. I think a lot of people have lost hope. They have lost, the sense of community, being isolated for one thing, which has caused, I think, a lot of stress. You talked about PTSD, of being in, some of those situations, and, after a sickness. But I think that PTSD, can be there, and manifest in so many ways, which of course that's going to wreak havoc on the body, physically and also mentally. So I thank you so much for joining us here today on the Mindset Mentor and being a radiant light and helping to educate the masses.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, Tanya. And I just want to really praise what you're doing and empowering folks to and giving hope yourself, because I honestly think that we're in a time of hurt, and we need healing right now. We truly need healing, like at so many levels, physically, spiritually, mentally, and this show is doing that on a regular basis. So I really want to commend you.
Oh, thank you so much. And yes, we need love and compassion out there. And, listen, let's send as much compassion to all those out there, to each other. Even though some days, we're not feeling our best, we can be intolerable, but let's try to send love and compassion, and also certainly send love and compassion to our medical professionals who have been working so hard to keep you living your best life. Stay tuned. More coming up here on Sauga 960.